Hello, my name is Kevin Surface. I'm a detective with the Allen County Sheriff's Department. I'm here with Sergeant Joel Ellert, who wears a lot of hats with the Sheriff's Department. We're going to talk a little bit today about his experience. He's also a great one to talk to if you're thinking about or on the fence about putting in an application. This is the individual that we want to hear from. So it's going to be an informative talk, hopefully, just about the background process, what that entails, and that sort of thing. But just kind of starting off, I know we've worked together a long time. You have a lot of history. You've worked in a lot of different parts of the department, so you have a very good working knowledge of the different divisions and that sort of thing. So if you could just kind of start out by taking us through kind of your journey to where you become today as a sergeant.
I can do that. Sergeant Joel Ellert. I am currently the third shift patrol sergeant. I started my career with the Sheriff's Department in September 2000 at the Allen County Jail as a confinement officer. I became a police officer in 2004. Went through the academy in 2006, went out to patrol, became a patrolman, was there until 2017. Spent most of those years as a canine handler. I think my dog and I were together for almost 9 years. Worked in our civil division as a court bailiff for a year. I've worked in our warrants division. I did that for 2 years, had a great partner, did a lot of fun stuff, caught a lot of people, served a lot of warrants. There was a time there towards the end of my warrants career where I was approached because they were looking at making a background hiring position full-time. I had been doing it part-time as a side type of thing for the department for about 3 or 4 years at that point. It was brought to my attention that they wanted to make it full-time. They asked me if I'd be interested. I said absolutely. They posted the position. I bid on it, got it. Went and became a full-time background investigator. One of the catches I had to agree to by taking the position was that I had to agree to become a polygraph examiner. Not something I had looked at in my career that I thought I'd ever do. It was not something I was extremely interested in, but I figured it's part of the job. I'll do it. A couple years went by. I was promoted. I was promoted to the rank of corporal. Went through polygraph school, which is, as you know, being a polygraph examiner is one of the hardest police classes you will ever take. It's 400 hours of education that they cram into 10 weeks. And we both completed our polygraph school. I went through and continued to do the hiring processes for the police officers and confinement officers. Being that it was my full-time job, I was doing the majority of the polygraphs. As you have cases, you have to do that type of stuff. So we were kind of split into about, I'd say 60-40, 70-30 at the time. About 2 years ago, I decided I was ready to move on with my career. I loved my position I was in, but I loved my position that I was in, but I felt like I wanted more. My first love has always been patrol. I kind of wanted to go back, and the sergeant position came open, so I put in for it. I was promoted to sergeant at that point and went back out to patrol as a third shift patrol sergeant, and that's kind of where I sit now. Hopefully I didn't miss any parts of my career. It's been a long career. It started, like I said, in September 2000, so I just completed year 25 with the department.
Wow. And it sounds like you've kind of hit every part of the department at some point or another.
Everything except detective and vice narcotics, I think.
So I guess, and I want to come back to that a little later with the polygraph and that sort of thing. But first, I want to kind of hit on the hiring process. So because you were in charge of the hiring process for so long, I think you're a good resource for a lot of people who might be on the fence of, do I apply, don't I apply? What is the county looking for? All those different things. So I guess first off, I'll say, I remember I got hired on in 2006, so I'm almost 20 years on. And I can think back and I can remember being that kid in my early 20s, nervous about the thought of trying to become a police officer. It seems overwhelming. It seems like there's a lot of phases. So I wondered if you could just kind of break down for people who might be in that position or might be overwhelmed or not sure, kind of break down what kind of the general process is for somebody who wants to apply for the department.
The general process with us going back to an open process is first of all the application process, which can be overwhelming. The application is very long. It asks for a lot of details. Each application is reviewed by the personnel department, and they'll decide whether you move on to the next phase, which is the physical fitness test and the written test. The biggest thing I can tell people is if you get to the point where you've made it through the application process and you're selected to move to the fitness test and the written test, is don't come to the test unprepared. It is not the simple thing that people will tell you. I believe we haven't decided completely yet, but there is a new fit test going into effect by the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy in July. But currently we are using the old test. And if you come in out of shape, you're not going to be able to do the run. You're not going to be able to make the push-ups, and you're not going to be able to make the sit-ups. Once you complete the minimum standards for the fit test, you're going to go on to a written test, which is it's a pretty basic test, but it's a basic knowledge test. Get through that, and the next step is your background investigation. And we're going to delve, you and I are both going to be doing some of the home interviews, that type of stuff, and we're going to delve deep into people's background and make sure they're the type of the person that the department's looking for. Someone that's honest, someone that's got good character. It's pretty important to vet that person at that point. Once you make it through the background process, they come to us for a polygraph examination. With the polygraph examination, we're basically going to go through, look at the whole background process, and evaluate whether you've lied to us, basically if you've told us the truth throughout the entire process. Once that's completed, it's quite a long process, as you can tell we're getting into here. It gets pretty long. Once that's completed, you go on to what's called a board of command interview. They'll do an interview with the sheriff, the deputy chiefs, and the captains. They will interview you, decide whether you can move on from there, and then there's a psychological examination. Once you complete the psychological examination, you'll meet with our merit board, which is a group of individuals that are not associated with the department. They're common folks from outside, and a couple of them are attorneys, and they're going to interview, and they actually decide whether you make the hiring list or not. I know I went pretty deep into the whole process there.
I appreciate that, and I think anybody who might want information would appreciate that too. And I think, just listening to you talk about the process, I think to somebody on the outside, it could be, whoa, that's a long process. But I think it's important to hit on, we take hiring, at least I can speak for myself and you. I know we've worked and done backgrounds together. We take that very serious. The public has a trust in us that we're going to do the right thing and we're going to act the right way. So I think we take it very serious, and the sheriff does, in the sheriff's department, that we try and vet the people very thoroughly so we can try and get the best people available for the position. You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our vetting process is very, very detailed, and if you get through it, you're probably what we're looking for, I can say.
So just kind of circling back to one of the things you said that caught me about the fit test. I know you said that they might be changing it, and sometimes it can be challenging, but I think one of the things you were saying is if you come prepared, it's manageable.
Yeah,
it's not anything that people can't do if they just have a little preparation and work out. Yeah. But I think sometimes people go, well, what can I control? And that's one area.
That is the one spot in this whole entire hiring process that you as the candidate can't control.
Can't control, and you can come in prepared for that, so that you're all set for that. So I appreciate that. Like I said, I think we can both look back to when we were young kids trying to get on the department. It was a little overwhelming. One thing I will say that I've seen over the years that has changed somewhat is I think the process, I know when you did it and now the personnel division, that's there in place, they're very good about working with somebody and bringing them through the process and keeping them informed and that sort of thing. So I think it's not quite as intimidating as maybe it used to be 20 years ago.
I will say that when we went through it, everything was done by snail mail. You would take a test, and then you wouldn't hear anything for 3 or 4 weeks as to whether you passed or not. They do a really good job now of getting the results to you very quickly, either via email. When I did it, I would use text messaging a lot. I'm not positive they still do that. I've been away from it for 2 years, so but they do a very good job of keeping you informed. And the process is long and drawn out. It probably, I don't want to overestimate things, but it will probably take 6 to 8 months with an outside process to get this whole thing completed.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate all that information. I'm sure there's people on the fence. Just kind of lastly on the application process. If somebody's sitting at home and they're thinking to myself, man, this is something I always wanted to do, but am I the right fit? What are just some very general qualities you would say that police officers are expected to have, that somebody can kind of look within themselves and say, am I the right fit for this kind of job?
We've progressed in police work to a point where we're a much friendlier type of people than we used to be. We are looking for people that are honest. We're looking for people with good character. We're looking for intelligent people that have an open mind, can think through things. We are looking for someone that's not. I don't want to. I'm trying to think of the exact words for this. I'm going to kind of leave it there. But
I think that's good. I think you hit the nail on the head. Honesty, integrity, those are keys. I think if you just kind of look and say, if I had a police officer coming to my house, what qualities would I want them to have? And if you're the type of person who would have qualities, I think you'd be a good fit for our department.
One of the questions I ask people is when I interview people on the outside about a candidate, is one of the biggest questions I look at them and say is, would you want this person to respond to your house if you were in crisis? And that's one of the big things that I hit on when I'm doing interviews is, I don't care about a lot of stuff, but would you be comfortable with this person responding to your home when you're in crisis?
Okay. And I know you're in a position working patrol. I have it as well, where people come up to us on the street and say, hey, I've always wanted to be a police officer and I have this question or this question. So I thought maybe this has been covered in other videos, but I thought this might be a good opportunity to maybe bust a couple myths, so to speak. So one of the things I always get is, I hear if you apply for the sheriff's department, you have to work in the jail for years and years and years. Can you hit on that?
So that is, over the last couple of years, we've done an inside process where we only hired from within our jail and our court security. So that was the case. Now it is not the case. When you and I started it, we did.
Yep.
We had to work in the jail. I believe Sheriff Gladio changed all that and moved all the police officers out of the jail. It was either Sheriff Freeze or Sheriff Gladio. I can't remember exactly. But now you will start in the civil division, and some people get deterred by that. So you got to work courts. Well, you got to remember that first year of employment is you're not going to be with the department. You're going to spend 16, I believe it's 18 weeks now. You're going to spend 18 weeks in Indianapolis at the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. So the majority of your first year is spent at the academy. And then when you come back and you go to the field training, you're going to come out to patrol, you're going to go through field training, and that's 6 months of the year. So it's going to be, it's not so much you're sitting still like you used to in the jail. You do get assigned to the civil division to begin with. There are some thoughts and some processes to change that. Whether they've gone into effect or not, that's a little above my head. But
me too.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess, you hit on the civil division. I think that, there's a reason for everything. That's a good learning process. We always tell people it's great to know that. So those are just a couple of the myths that I hear, and I'm sure you do when people walk up to you about that sort of thing. So, okay, well, I appreciate all the information on the background. Let's talk about the dreaded polygraph a little bit, because that's something I know. I'm a polygraph examiner, so are you. I know that's one of the areas that people get a little intimidated by. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about polygraph. I think that there's a lot of myths about polygraph. So I know you talked a little bit about the training of a polygraph, going to the accredited school for 16 weeks, 4 months, and how tough it is. If a candidate gets to a polygraph, let's talk about a little bit about what the polygraph is for. And kind of that process.
So a lot of the myths about polygraph is people call it a lie detector. What we do is not a lie detector. It's a truth verification test. We're verifying as to whether you told us the whole truth on your when you went through your background process, your application process, that type of stuff. One of the biggest things is people think we're going to try and turn them, confuse them. That's not what it is. And honestly, I tell people when they come in, I want you to pass probably as much as you want to pass. It's a process that you have to go through, but it shouldn't be a scary process. I want you to be comfortable with me. Just be honest is one of the biggest things I tell people.
Absolutely. And to add to that, one of the things I always tell people is we're trying to prove the truth, not just trying to prove deception.
Yeah.
So people think, I'm going to take this test so they can see if I'm lying or not. But also, to your point, trying to find out if they're telling the truth. If you are telling the truth and you have nothing to hide, it's a pretty easy process to go through.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
just be open and honest, and tell us. Be truthful with us. Mm-hmm. Don't try to snake around things. There's a lot of things that you may think are important that you feel like you need to lie about, but that's really not the case.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think? I know, but if you could tell people, why do you think the polygraph is so important to the hiring process?
Because it brings out the true. How do I say it? Brings out people's honesty. Shows what type of person they are. If someone's willing to sit there and continually not tell me the truth about something small, that's probably not the person we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I always tell people, when I'm giving them a polygraph is, we have a stressful job. It's just true. There's fun, but just like any job, there's stress. And sometimes we have to tell the truth when it's not easy. Maybe a mistake was made, maybe something happened, and even under stress, we have to tell the truth. So that's why it's important, not just, hey, when we're sitting there talking, can you tell me the truth?
Yeah.
But when it's hard, are you still going to be truthful and honest and be that person that's expected as a police officer, whether that be in court down the road, that sort of thing?
There's an old adage I always go by. It's what you do when people are watching is not as big as what you do when people aren't watching.
Absolutely.
And that's something that the polygraph brings out.
So I get this a lot with polygraph is people come in and they go, hey, I'm really nervous, so I'm scared I'm not going to pass. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you probably get that too.
I do. And I tell people it's okay to be nervous. Everyone's nervous. I've been tested, what do you say, probably 40 times?
Yeah.
I've been tested probably 40 times, and every time I get attached to the instrument, I'm nervous. Just because it's uncomfortable, it's intimidating, but you really nervousness doesn't really affect the test. And I tell them that we're going to give you the first test that we're going to give you is basically going to set a baseline for me, and that's how you react to that test. And your nervousness is not going to affect that.
Yeah.
So if you're nervous, you're nervous. I don't want you to be nervous, but you're going to be.
And I always tell people I get a little worried if somebody's not nervous.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of expected.
Exactly.
So nerves are not going to affect the polygraph. So just know that we expect you to be nervous when you come in. That's completely normal. If you weren't, then we would wonder why not. So we're going to kind of wrap this up. I just want to talk about, again, I guess for people who are out there maybe potentially thinking about applying for the department, why Allen County Sheriff's Department? There's a lot of departments out there. They offer different things. Why our department, in your opinion?
There is, and I have family members that have been members of different departments. I have a family member that was a Fort Wayne police officer. I have a family member that was a Noble County Sheriff's officer. So it's our department is unique in the fact that you don't have to just be a patrolman. Mm-hmm. I know people put the adage of when you become a police officer, you're a patrolman. Mm-hmm. Well, with our department, you can work in warrants. You can work in our civil division in the courts. You can become a detective. You can work in vice and narcotics. We have officers that are assigned to federal task force. We have a plethora of things that you can do. We have
school resource
officers. We have a canine division. We have a SWAT team. We have different things. We have what's called a civil disturbance unit, which I forgot to mention in my history. I'm actually a team leader of. We have a vast majority of things that you can do outside of just being the patrolman. Mm-hmm. Not everybody wants to be a career patrolman. I love patrol. It's always been my first love. Mm-hmm. I like talking to people. I like being out in the public. That's not what everyone fits. And that's one thing we're looking for when we look at candidates is every candidate has their place. Mm-hmm. We're not just looking for what the typical SWAT officer. We're not always just looking for that. Yes, there are places for those people. Yes, there are places. There's places for everyone. We have a whole mental health section that we work with. Mm-hmm. So there's just a vast variety of things that people can do on our department.
I agree completely. I remember an older officer telling me when I first came on, it takes all kinds, and that's never been truer. There's some people who love patrol that don't. As a detective, there's things I do that wouldn't interest some people, but there's things that as patrol that might interest people. Yep. So what's nice is you can find your niche and you can really get in there and really find what your strengths are and apply those. And it might be different than the person next to you. Yep. So that's always been my favorite part about this department is there is so many avenues you can go. You're not pigeonholed into one thing. And I think that's good. So
one other thing of having hired the last 35 of the last 40 officers on our department. The biggest thing I tell them is you are young, be patient. Be patient. You have a lot to learn in that first 5 years. This is not a career that within the first 1 to 2 years, you're going to accomplish all your goals and everything you want to do. This is a time-consuming job. It is a career. It's not a job. It is a career.
Okay. I guess in closing, I just have one more question for you because it always interests me, especially somebody who has 25 years on. What still excites you when you get ready for work? What still excites you when you wake up in your third shift? So I'll say in the afternoon. But when you wake up and you know I'm going to work tonight, what lights that fire inside of you to keep having the passion for this?
You know, your job changes constantly. It's not the same thing every night. I have several friends that work in factories, that type of stuff, and they go to work and they do the same thing every night. This job is always different. When I wake up, I don't know what I'm going to get when I get in my car. I get in my car, I kick my computer on. I usually turn my radio on about 10, 15 minutes before I call on, and I start listening. My job's a little different because I have to supervise and I have to be in control of what's going on out on the street. On the weekends, I'm usually the highest ranking official on duty in the entire county. So I have to be kind of conscious as to what's going on. And that excites me. And your job changes every night, every day. It's different every day. It's not the same thing over and over. And that's where I get the motivation to continue to go out and work.
Okay. And as somebody who's done backgrounds for a long time, if you're talking to somebody out there who's watching this that may be on the fence about, do I apply, don't I apply, is this the right career for me, what advice would you give them as somebody who's maybe not sure or too nervous?
Honestly, one thing that I tell people is get a hold of our public information officers, and if you're on the fence and you want some insight into the department, get a hold of one of our public information officers and schedule a ride-along with one of us. We will take civilians on ride-alongs, and we will show you what we do, and that can get you into whether, hey, is this for me? Is this not for me? That type of thing.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to say, Sergeant Ellert, I appreciate your time. Thanks for sitting down and sharing your expertise on the background process and polygraph. Anybody who's out there who's watching this or knows somebody who might be watching this that may be a good fit for our department, please make sure and share this. Let them know so they can get some information, and hopefully one day somebody out there watching will be working alongside us one day, and they can say, hey, I remember that video and you guys did, and now we're coworkers. So thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Joel.
All right.